They tortured the black man for trespassing, then learned it was his land. I said, "Get off this land, old man." The shout cracked through the night air like a whip. 3 white men stood under the glow of their truck headlights, rain dripping off the barrels of their shotguns. And right there, standing alone in the mud, was Samuel Hayes, 63 years old, shoulders bent but eyes steady. He didn't raise his hands this time. Not yet. He just looked at them the way his father used to look at storms, quiet, tired, and ready. "You hear me, boy?" One of them spat. "This ain't your land." Samuel's voice came slow, deep, and calm, the kind that made you listen even if you didn't want to. "Then whose is it?" The man with the shotgun laughed. "Ours now." Samuel stepped closer, boots sinking into the wet soil. "You see that tree line?" he said, pointing. "My granddaddy planted those when he got his freedom papers. See that barn? My father built it with his bare hands. And this dirt right here?" He knelt, scooping a handful of red Georgia clay. "This dirt remembers me." The biggest man smirked. "That's cute. Now get off it before I make you part of it." He hit Samuel in the chest with the butt of his gun. The old man fell to his knees, the rain mixing with the blood running from his lip. He didn't cry out, didn't beg. He just whispered, "I buried my father right here. Don't tell me it ain't mine." The man kicked him again. "You people always think you own something." The paper fell from Samuel's pocket, old, wrinkled, and stamped with a county seal. One of them bent down, frowning. "What's this?" "Deed," Samuel said softly. "Signed 1912, Hayes Family Farm." They laughed. But then, the youngest one stepped toward the fence line. A rusted wooden sign hung sideways, half covered in mud. He wiped it with his sleeve. The letters carved into the wood glowed faint in the headlight glare. Hayes Family Land, since 1912. The boy's smile faded. "Wait, that's his name." The older man froze. The shotgun lowered a little. Samuel lifted his head, eyes bloodshot but alive. "My name's carved into this land," he said. "You can beat me, but you can't erase me." For a second, nobody moved. The rain fell. The truck engine hummed low, and every man there felt something they couldn't name. Shame, maybe. Or history catching up. "His name's on the sign," the youngest man whispered. The leader spun toward him. "Shut up," but his voice wavered now. The light from the truck flickered across their faces. Anger draining, doubt crawling in. Samuel pushed himself up on shaking elbows, mud clinging to his skin. "Told you, boys," he rasped. "This land got my blood in it. You can't beat that out." The biggest one, Dale, stepped back, chest heaving. "Don't start that old story stuff," he muttered, but even he couldn't meet Samuel's eyes. The youngest man, barely 20, kept staring at the sign. "Hayes Family Land," he repeated softly. "My grandpa used to talk about this place." Samuel wiped his mouth, coughed once. "Then he probably talked about my granddaddy, too. Worked side by side after the war. Built the first fence right over there." He pointed toward a broken post half buried in weeds. "He didn't own it alone. They built it together," the boy blinked. "That's not what I was told." Samuel's laugh was short and hoarse. "You were told a lot of things." Lightning cracked across the field. For a second, the whole farm lit up. The house, the barn, the pecan trees heavy with rain. Everything looked old but proud, like it had survived too much to bow now. Dale's buddy kicked at the dirt. Even if it's true, what's it matter? That was a long time ago. Samuel looked at him through the rain. "Matter? Son, my father died paying taxes on this land so you could drive through it today. Every inch of this ground cost him something. His breath, his pride, sometimes his blood. You don't forget that," the youngest man's voice cracked. "We didn't know," Samuel cut him off. "You didn't want to." For the first time, the men looked smaller than the man on the ground. Their hate had run out of breath. All that was left was shame. Dale lowered his gun. "Let's go," he said quietly, but Samuel shook his head. "No, you stay right here and look." He pointed toward the barn where the faded paint still showed his family's initials. H&S Hayes, 1912. Every nail in there got a name. Every nail remembers who swung the hammer. The youngest man wiped his face with a wet sleeve, voice trembling. "We messed up." Samuel's eyes softened, just a little. "You did. But the land forgives faster than men do. Question is, can you?" The wind pushed through the trees, carrying his words like a hymn. For the first time that night, nobody called him boy. The storm was fading, but the shame stayed. The headlights dimmed, leaving the men in the gray light of early dawn. The rain had stopped, but the ground was soaked, a mirror of the mess they'd made. Samuel sat on an old stump, breathing heavy. His shirt was torn, mud streaked his arms, but his voice came steady. "Ain't the first time somebody tried to take this land," he said. "But I'll be damned if it happens again." The youngest man, the one who'd found the sign, took a slow step forward. "Sir," he said quietly, "you really own all this?" Samuel looked around, his eyes softening as they swept over the field. "The papers say I do," he said. "But truth is, the land owns me. My daddy used to say, you don't keep the soil alive, it keeps you alive." He paused, touching the dirt with his fingers. "Every spring we planted here, every fall we buried here. That's the deal." The men didn't speak. They just listened. For the first time, Samuel wasn't someone they wanted to run off. He was someone they couldn't look away from. The youngest man broke the silence. "What happened to your family?" Samuel took a deep breath, his voice heavy. "They worked this land for generations. My granddaddy got it after freedom papers were signed. My father fought in the war, said he came back just to keep this place safe." He looked out toward the barn. "Then one summer a fire took half of it. My mother, my sister, gone. Folks came to help, but when the smoke cleared, the deeds were gone too." The men shifted uneasily. Samuel smiled, bitter. White hands always found a way to hold what black hands built. The boy swallowed hard. "So, you rebuilt?" Samuel nodded slowly. "Yeah, took years. Paid every tax they threw at me. Worked nights, sold crops, saved what little I could, but I never left. Because my father told me, if you leave your land, you leave your name behind." He looked straight at them. "And I ain't leavin' my name." The oldest of the three stared at the ground. "We didn't know," Samuel sighed. "You didn't ask." The sky lightened. The air smelled of rain and earth, clean, heavy, alive. One by one, the men put down their guns. The youngest man walked over and picked up the deed from the mud. He wiped it carefully and handed it to Samuel. "I'm sorry," he said softly. Samuel took it, hands shaking but proud. "Sorry don't fix history," he said. "But it's a start." The men nodded, wordless. The land had spoken louder than any of them ever could. "You telling me this land was his the whole time?" The sheriff's voice carried across the small county office the next morning. Dale stood stiff in front of the desk, hat in his hands, mud still on his boots. He nodded once. "Paper's real, Sheriff. Been real since 1912. The sheriff took the deed from him, eyes narrowing at the county seal. Hayes Family Farm. Signed by Judge McIntyre himself. He looked up, uneasy. That judge died 60 years ago. Outside, people had already begun whispering. Word moved faster than the wind in small towns. 3 white men beat an old black farmer on land that wasn't just his. It was history's. Samuel sat on his porch, ribs wrapped, coffee cooling beside him. Neighbors he hadn't seen in years slowed their trucks when they passed, some pretending not to look, others tipping their hats in quiet apology. The youngest attacker, Cody, came up the dirt road carrying 2 boards and a hammer. "Sir," he said, voice shaking, "I came to fix the sign." Samuel studied him for a long moment, then nodded toward the fence. "Go on." Each nail Cody drove echoed across the field. When he was done, the sign stood straight again. Hayes Family Land, since 1912. Cody stepped back, breathing hard. "My granddad used to tell stories about a Hayes who helped him rebuild after the flood. He said the man never asked for money." Samuel nodded slowly. "That was my father." Cody's eyes filled. "I guess we forgot the part where he was black." Samuel sighed. "America forgets what it's scared to remember." By evening, the sheriff came himself. He walked the property line with Samuel, hat in hand. I can't undo what happened, he said. But I can make it right. Samuel looked at the horizon, orange light spilling over the fields his father once plowed. Making it right starts with telling the truth, he said. All of it. The next Sunday, the county paper ran a headline that turned heads from one side of Georgia to the other. Black farmer owned the land they called his crime. In the diner downtown, voices dropped when Samuel's name came up. Some people looked angry, others ashamed. But for the first time in years, nobody dared call him a trespasser. The truth had roots now, and the land was remembering the man who never left it. Mr. Hayes, they want you to speak. The sheriff's deputy stood on Samuel's porch, hat clutched tight in both hands. Behind him, down the hill, the small-town square was full. Reporters, neighbors, and people who'd once crossed the street to avoid him. Samuel sighed, looking out at the fields. The sun was sliding down low, brushing gold across the rows of soil his family had bled for. Didn't think I'd live long enough to see folks listen, he murmured. He stood, slow and careful, his ribs still sore. All right then, let's talk. The crowd parted as he walked in, hat in hand, steps steady on the cracked pavement. People stared, not out of hate this time, but guilt. Cody stood near the front, head low, eyes red. The mayor handed Samuel the mic. No one said a word. Even the wind seemed to stop moving. Samuel looked down at the ground first, the same dirt they'd all walked on for generations. And then he began. They said, I trespassed, he said quietly. But this land, this town, it's got more of my family's sweat in it than half the folks standing here. He paused. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, a long, lonely sound. My granddaddy bought this land after freedom. My father built the barn. My mother planted the garden that still grows on the south side. And me, I stayed. Through storms, through loss, through hate. I stayed. The mayor swallowed hard. The sheriff looked down. Samuel continued, his voice firm now. You can beat a man's body. You can burn his house. You can even steal his name. But you can't take the truth. Not forever. He looked right at the men who'd attacked him. You asked who this land belonged to. Now you know. It belongs to the people who never stopped fighting to keep it. The crowd stood silent. Then an old woman in the back started clapping. One by one, others joined. Cody stepped forward, tears streaking down his cheeks. Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry, Samuel nodded, voice calm but kind. I know, son. That's why you're still standing here. When it was over, the crowd began to leave quietly. No shouting, no noise, just thought. The sheriff walked up, extended his hand. Samuel looked at it for a long time, then shook it. History doesn't have to repeat, the sheriff said. Samuel smiled, small but real. No, sheriff, but it does have to be remembered. He turned back toward the fields. The light was fading, but the land, his land, glowed like fire in the dusk. They talking about you on the radio, Mr. Hayes. The voice came from the diner doorway. It was Cody, holding a small transistor radio, mud still on his boots but hope in his eyes. Samuel looked up from his coffee. What they saying now? Cody turned the volume up. The radio crackled, and a woman's voice filled the room. Local farmer Samuel Hayes, whose land was nearly stolen, has sparked a conversation across the South about property, race, and forgotten ownership. The waitress froze mid-pour. The sheriff, sitting at the counter, lowered his head. Samuel didn't say a word. He just stared out the window, watching a crow land on the old fence post his father built half a century ago. Guess they finally remember my name, he said softly. By afternoon, news trucks rolled into town, reporters asking questions, cameras flashing, faces pretending to care. Samuel answered only one question. What does this land mean to you? He smiled faintly. Everything. It's where my people were broken, and where they learned to stand again. Later that evening, Cody showed up again, this time holding a box. What's that? Samuel asked. Cody opened it. Inside was a stack of papers, yellowed with age. I found these in the courthouse basement. Old property records. He handed Samuel one page. The ink faded but still legible. Transferred from Hayes to County Office, 1921, with no signature. Samuel frowned. "That's my grandfather's deed," Cody nodded. "They stole it once before. The county took the papers, then resold the land years later. Your father must have spent half his life buying it back." Samuel's throat tightened. "He never told me that." "He didn't want you to carry it," Cody said quietly. "He carried enough for both of you." Samuel stared at the paper, the edges crumbling but the name still there. "Hayes," he whispered. "This is proof. Not just for me, for all of us." The next week, the State Historical Board arrived. They walked the fields, touched the barn walls, listened to Samuel's story. And 1 month later, a bronze plaque was set into the ground beside the fence. It read, "Hayes Family Land, East 1912. In honor of the Hayes family, who held their ground when the world tried to take it." When the sun set that day, Samuel stood by it alone. He placed his father's old hat on top of the post and whispered, "We did it, Daddy. The world finally knows." The wind carried his words through the pecan trees, soft as a hymn. "Mr. Hayes, there's a crowd outside," the voice came from the porch. It was Cody again, now wearing clean clothes and a nervous smile. Samuel stepped out slowly, cane in hand, his back still straight despite the years. Down the dirt road, cars lined both sides. Families, students, and reporters stood under the sun. Black, white, old, young, all waiting by the fence with signs that read, "Our land, our history, and truth never dies." Samuel's eyes softened. "What are they doing here?" Cody smiled. "They came to see you. They said your story gave them hope." A young black woman stepped forward, maybe 20, holding a folder. "Mr. Hayes," she said, voice trembling with pride, "I'm a law student. Your story made me research property cases. Turns out there are hundreds of families like yours who lost their land the same way." Samuel nodded slowly. "Then you make sure they get it back." She smiled through tears. "That's what I plan to do." The sheriff arrived, hat in hand, standing in the back of the crowd. He'd traded his uniform for plain clothes now, said he didn't need it to serve anymore. He raised his hand in quiet respect. Samuel nodded once in return. That evening, the local paper ran another headline. "The Hayes Legacy Movement. One man's land inspires a nation." Across the South, people started calling their counties, digging up old records and finding lost deeds. What had started as one man's pain was turning into a wave of justice. On his porch that night, Samuel sat watching the sunset bleed orange and gold over his fields. Cody stood beside him, sipping coffee, eyes full of thought. "You ever think your daddy knew this would happen?" Cody asked. Samuel chuckled softly. "My daddy didn't dream big like that. He just wanted me to never bow." He looked out at the horizon, the land stretching wide, proud, and free. But maybe he knew the land would speak one day, and maybe tonight. It finally did. Cody nodded, quiet. "You changed a lot of people, Mr. Hayes." Samuel smiled, his eyes glinting in the fading light. "Nah, son. The truth did that. I just held the door open." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and soil, the same scent that had been in his family for generations. And for the first time in a long time, Samuel felt peace. Not just for himself, but for every name carved into forgotten fences across America. "Grandpa, can I plant one?" The small voice broke the morning quiet. Samuel looked down from his chair, his weathered hands resting on the armrest. His granddaughter, Ava, 7 years old, bright-eyed and barefoot, was holding a tiny pecan seed in her palm. He smiled. "You sure can, baby girl. That's how it all starts." They stood together by the fence, the same fence that once held the old sign. Now it held something new, a bronze plaque gleaming in the sun. Hayes Family Land. The soil remembers. Ava dug a small hole with her hands and dropped the seed in. Samuel covered it gently with dirt. "You take care of it," he said softly. "One day it'll take care of you." The years had slowed him down, but not his spirit. Every morning he walked the fields, cane in one hand, coffee in the other. Every step whispered the same prayer his father used to say, "Lord, keep this land honest." The world had changed since that night. The town had built a small museum at the edge of his property, the Hayes Heritage Center. School buses came from other towns now. Children listened to Samuel tell the story of a land no one could steal because its roots ran too deep. He didn't talk about hate anymore. He talked about memory, about how the land had its own heartbeat, one that remembered every foot that walked it, every hand that planted, every voice that refused to be silenced. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Cody came by again. Older now, wearing a shirt that read, Hayes Legacy Project. He sat beside Samuel on the porch. "You know, Mr. Hayes," he said, "they're naming the highway after your father." Samuel smiled faintly. "Took 'em long enough," Cody laughed. "People still ask how you forgave us." Samuel looked at the horizon. The sky burned gold over his fields. "Forgiveness ain't for them," he said. "It's for the soil. Hate poisons the ground. Forgiveness makes it grow again." They sat in silence, the kind that feels full, not empty. That night, the wind rustled through the pecan trees. The new sapling Ava had planted shimmered under the moonlight. Samuel looked at it from his porch, the corners of his eyes wet. "Now it's your turn," he whispered. "Keep it alive." He closed his eyes, the night wrapping around him like an old hymn. Somewhere deep in the earth, roots stretched and settled, strong, steady, and free, and the land, once stained by pain, breathed again with peace. Moral of the story: land isn't just dirt, it's memory. When truth is buried, it waits, patient as seed in the ground, until someone brave enough digs it back up. Justice doesn't erase pain, it grows from it. And no matter how many times hate tries to take root, the soil remembers who it truly belongs to.